in Oklahoma. A judge rules that part of the execution law is unconstitutional.
It has nothing to do with the legality of the death penalty itself or the drugs used, but rather the secrecy of not allowing inmates to know the source of the drugs.
Our team coverage begins with 2 News reporter Patricia Santos. She's live in the newsroom with more from the family of a victim killed by a prisoner now on death row. Patricia?
Karen, there are more than 50 names on the Oklahoma death row list and hundreds of families waiting for justice. Angie Short has been waiting for 7 years to see justice for her niece, Brooke Whitaker, and Brooke's 7-month-old daughter, Kia. In 2009, Raymond Johnson was sentenced to death for the murders. He recently filed an appeal for a retrial, which may delay his death for a few more years. Short says the judge's ruling today is an insult to the victims and their families.
The inmate is worried about what drug they're getting, thinking it might be cruel and inhumane. And what is cruel and inhumane is what he did to Brooke and Kaya. I mean, he hit her in the head, Brooke in the head, several times with a hammer.
Johnson set the house on fire with Brooke and Kia still inside alive. 2 years earlier, he had been released early from serving a 20-year sentence for manslaughter. Whitaker left behind 3 young children, and Short says she was undecided about the death penalty before her family's tragedy. And you're going to hear her message to families who are currently waiting for justice coming up on 2 News at 6. Live in the newsroom, Patricia Santos, 2 News works for you.
Thank you, Patty. Now, to be clear, today's decision won't overturn death penalty cases. So what exactly does it all mean?
The 2 News sat down with the University of Tulsa law professor Lynn Inzeroth a short time ago, and she studies, even wrote a book on capital punishment. She believes it may be some time before the state's next execution.
I think the death penalty here in Oklahoma is halted, at least for the time being, until this particular issue is resolved.
Now, the professor says this is an issue that every state that allows the death penalty may face.
Today's court ruling follows weeks of legal maneuvers in state and federal courts. When the U.S. Supreme Court rejected the inmates' final appeals in January, the state scheduled the executions, but then their attorneys came up with a new strategy. February 25th, attorneys for the inmates file suit against the state, claiming the secrecy surrounding the executions keeps the courts from determining whether the punishment is cruel and unusual. March 4th, the lawsuit moves to federal court at the state's request. 3 days later, a federal judge sends the case back to Oklahoma County District Court. March 10th, the Oklahoma County judge refuses to delay the executions. The next day, attorneys turn to the state Supreme Court for an emergency stay of execution. March 13th, the state's highest court forwards the emergency stay request to the Court of Criminal Appeals and sends the inmate lawsuit back to Oklahoma County, where the judge there sets the lawsuit hearing for 8 hours before Clayton Lockett's March 20th execution. March 14th, the Department of Corrections reveals it doesn't have all the drugs it needs for execution. March 18th, the Court of Criminal Appeals delays the executions until April to give prison administrators time to procure the execution drugs. March 21st, the Department of Corrections adopts a new execution procedure, giving the prison warden the option of choosing from 5 different drug combinations. March 24th, Lockett and Warner's attorneys asked the courts to declare the new protocol unconstitutional. One of the drug combinations was used on an Ohio inmate in January. Witnesses said he struggled and gagged for more than 10 minutes before losing consciousness. His family has since filed suit. And finally today, the Oklahoma County judge ruled the Oklahoma's execution law is unconstitutional.
Going in depth now, the state has executed 103 people since 1915. Each inmate spends about 7.5 years on death row. The youngest inmate to be killed was 18. He was executed in 1933. The oldest inmate to be killed was 74. The average age of inmates to be executed is 38. Now, this is one of the most popular stories on our website at kjrh.com. That's where you can find the latest, as well as share your comments.